Captain Ta-Won Kim stood on the bridge of the TSS Defiance, staring at the tactical display with grim determination. The holographic projection showed the vast emptiness of space, broken only by the approaching red dots of enemy ships. Each dot represented death. Each dot meant the end of everything humans had built. "Status report," he ordered, his voice steady despite the circumstances. Lieutenant Jewry Park looked up from her console, her face pale in the blue light of her screen. "The Imperial Armada has entered the outer system, Captain. 63 capital ships, over 200 support vessels. And us," murmured Commander Da-Hyun Lee, the first officer. Kim nodded. "And us." The Defiance was not an ordinary ship. It was Earth's last hope, a prototype vessel built in secret during the final days before the fall of the home planet. Its hull contained experimental technology that had never been tested in actual combat. 5 years of brutal war against the Galactic Hegemony had reduced humanity's once proud fleet to this single ship. Captain Kim walked slowly around the circular bridge, touching the shoulders of his crew. Each person sat at their station, faces tense but determined. They knew what was coming. They knew what was at stake. "The Grand Admiral has sent another message," Park said. "He demands our immediate surrender." "Grand Admiral Tolrock thinks humans are barely evolved primates," Kim replied. "Let's show him how dangerous primates can be when cornered." The crew exchanged glances. They had all heard stories of Tolrock's cruelty toward conquered human colonies. The alien commander had a reputation for making examples of those who resisted. Kim returned to his command chair and sat down, his back straight. "Officer 1, what's the status of our shields?" Defensive Systems Officer Subin 1 did not look up from his console. "Shields at maximum capacity, Captain. But they won't hold against a concentrated attack from more than 5 enemy ships at once." "And weapons?" Weapons Officer Jin Ho Kang responded immediately. "All weapons systems online, conventional missiles loaded, plasma cannons charged. But our ammunition is limited." Kim nodded, taking in the information. The odds were impossible. No military strategy in human history had ever suggested that one ship could defeat hundreds. But there was no other choice. "Communications, open a channel to all crew stations," Kim ordered. Lieutenant Park tapped a few keys. "Channel open, sir." Kim took a deep breath. "This is your captain speaking. By now, you all know what we face. The hegemony believes their victory is certain. They see us as weak, as primitive, as already defeated." He paused, letting his words sink in. "But they don't understand humans. They don't understand that we're at our best when things seem hopeless. They don't understand that we've always beaten the odds." Throughout the ship, crew members listened. In engineering, mechanics stopped their work. In medical, doctors and nurses looked up from their preparations. In the mess hall, off-duty personnel gathered around speakers. "I won't lie to you," Kim continued. "Our chances are slim. But the Defiance is not a normal ship, and you are not a normal crew. Each of you was chosen because you're the best humanity has to offer. Together, we might just pull off a miracle." On the bridge, First Officer Lee watched Kim with admiration. The captain had always had a way with words. "We carry with us the hopes of every human colony still suffering under hegemony rule. We carry the memory of Earth. And we carry something the enemy cannot understand, the human spirit. Stand ready at your posts. Trust your training. Trust each other. And remember, Defiance is more than our ship's name. It's our purpose." Kim ended the transmission and turned to his bridge crew. "Tactical, show me the enemy formation." The main view screen shifted to display the approaching Imperial Armada. The enemy ships moved in perfect formation, their discipline evident even at this distance. The formation was led by a massive vessel at least 5 times the size of the Defiance, the Grand Admiral's flagship. "They're moving slowly," observed Commander Lee. "They don't see us as a threat." Kim nodded. "Good. Their arrogance gives us time." He turned to Navigation Officer Yu-Jin Choi. Set course for the asteroid field near the 5th planet. Full impulse power. Choi's fingers danced across her controls. Course set, Captain. Execute. The Defiance moved swiftly, its engines glowing blue against the blackness of space. The ship accelerated toward a dense field of asteroids, some as small as a shuttle, others larger than the ship itself. The enemy has detected our movement, reported Sensor Officer Jae-hoon Ryu. They're adjusting course to intercept. Kim smiled slightly. Are they sending the entire fleet? No, sir. They've dispatched a squadron of 10 destroyers. Just as I hoped. They're still underestimating us. Kim turned to Weapons Officer Kang. Prepare to deploy Mine Pattern Alpha once we reach the asteroid field. Kang nodded. Mines ready, Captain. The Defiance reached the asteroid field first, its smaller size allowing it to maneuver between the floating rocks with precision. The pursuing hegemony destroyers were forced to slow down, their bulkier designs less suited for tight spaces. Deploy mines, Kim ordered. Kang pressed a series of buttons. Mines deployed. Sir. The Defiance released dozens of small dark objects that blended perfectly with the asteroids. Each mine contained enough explosive power to cripple a destroyer. The ship continued deeper into the field, drawing the enemy vessels after it. Enemy ships entering the minefield, announced Ryu. Kim nodded. Detonate on my mark. He waited, watching as the enemy ships moved deeper into the trap. Mark. The silence of space was broken by a series of devastating explosions. The mines detonated in sequence, catching the hegemony destroyers by surprise. 3 enemy ships were destroyed instantly, their hulls ripped apart. 4 more suffered critical damage, drifting helplessly through space. 3 enemy vessels still operational, reported Ryu. They're retreating from the asteroid field. A cheer went up from the bridge crew, but Kim raised his hand for silence. This is just the beginning. The Grand Admiral won't make the same mistake twice. As if on cue, the tactical display updated. The main Imperial fleet was changing formation, spreading out to surround the asteroid field. They're deploying patrol ships to all exit points, said Ryu. They mean to trap us here. Kim's expression remained calm. Communications, send a distress signal. Park looked confused. Sir, there's no one to receive it. I know, but I want them to think we're calling for help. Make it seem like we believe reinforcements are coming. Understanding dawned on Park's face. Yes, Captain. She began broadcasting a false distress signal. The message had its intended effect. The Imperial fleet shifted again, several ships moving to patrol the outer system, looking for non-existent human reinforcements. Their formation is thinning, observed Commander Lee. Kim nodded. Now for the difficult part. Navigation. Plot a course directly toward the enemy flagship. Maximum speed. The bridge fell silent. Even for the Defiance, attacking the Grand Admiral's ship directly seemed like suicide. Sir, began Lee, with all due respect. I know, Commander, Kim interrupted. It seems reckless, but sometimes the best defense is an attack so bold that your enemy can't believe you'd attempt it. Lee hesitated, then nodded. Yes, sir. The Defiance burst from the asteroid field at maximum speed, its engines straining as it rocketed toward the heart of the Imperial fleet. The move was so unexpected that the enemy took precious seconds to respond, seconds the human ship used to close the distance. Enemy vessels moving to intercept, reported Ryu. Time to contact, 40 seconds. Kim's hands tightened on the arms of his chair, shields at maximum. All weapons ready. The Defiance raced toward its destiny, carrying with it humanity's last hope. Whether they would survive the next hour was uncertain, but one thing was clear: they would not go quietly. They would fight with everything they had. They would show the galactic hegemony that humanity was not to be underestimated. And perhaps, just perhaps, they would change the course of the war. 3 months earlier, Captain Ta-Won Kim had stood in a dimly lit underground lab on Earth's last free territory. The walls were lined with servers and blinking equipment. Armed guards stood at every entrance. This facility was humanity's final secret. Dr. Jai-Young Song walked toward him, her lab coat wrinkled from days without rest. Dark circles hung under her eyes, but there was fire in her gaze. She carried a tablet displaying complex diagrams. "Thank you for coming, Captain," she said. "What I'm about to show you doesn't leave this room." Kim nodded. All around them, scientists worked frantically, aware that hegemony forces were closing in. They had weeks, maybe days, before this final human stronghold fell. "Project Prometheus," Song said, activating a holographic display. A spinning blue and white core appeared between them. Earth's last, desperate technological gamble. Kim studied the hologram. "What am I looking at, Doctor?" "The quantum cascade reactor," Song replied, expanding the image with her fingers. "It can theoretically tap into dimensional energy. It generates power beyond anything the hegemony possesses." "Theoretically?" Kim asked, focusing on that troubling word. Song's expression grew grave. "We never had time for proper testing. If pushed beyond 80% capacity, the system could destabilize." "Destabilize how?" Kim asked. Song hesitated. "Best case, a localized quantum rupture that disables the ship. Worst case, it could create a tear in spacetime." "That sounds dangerous," Kim said. "Extremely," Song agreed. "But we're installing it on your ship anyway." She turned off the hologram. "The Defiance is our last hope, Captain. When Earth falls, and it will fall, you must carry this technology to safety." Kim frowned. "My orders are to defend Earth with the Defiance." "And you will," Song said, "until the defense fails. Then your new orders are to escape, to survive, to find a way to turn this technology into a weapon that can hurt the hegemony." Now, 3 months later, with Earth a burned memory and humanity on the brink of extinction, Captain Kim stood on the bridge of the Defiance facing an impossible battle. The quantum cascade reactor hummed deep in the ship's core, untested but ready. "They're dividing their forces," reported Tactical Officer Han Jun Park. 3 battle groups, attempting to surround us." Kim smiled grimly. "Exactly as we hoped. Chief Song, prepare the reactor for Pulse Sequence Alpha." In the engineering bay, Dr. Song calibrated the glowing core of the quantum cascade reactor. The blue light cast strange shadows across her face. Around her, engineering staff moved with nervous energy, checking readings and adjusting controls. "The gravitational anomalies in this system should amplify the effect," she muttered to herself, "if we time it correctly." Song had joined the Defiance crew during the final evacuation of Earth. She was the only person who truly understood how the reactor worked. Her hands moved confidently over the controls despite the danger. The room felt unnaturally cold near the reactor core, a side effect of the quantum field it generated. On the bridge, Kim watched as the Imperial fleet split into 3 massive groups. Each group contained enough firepower to destroy the Defiance many times over. They moved with mechanical precision, closing a trap around the lone human ship. "Grand Admiral Tolrock is on the command ship of the Central Battle Group," reported Communications Officer Min Jikang. "He's broadcasting his battle plans to all his captains. He's not even trying to hide them from us." "Why would he?" First Officer Lee said bitterly. "He thinks we're already defeated." Kim leaned forward in his chair. "Let's use that against him. Helm, prepare for emergency maneuver sequence sticks." Navigation Officer Yoo-Jin Choi nodded. "Ready, Captain." "Weapons, target the lead ships in the port battle group. Full spread of conventional missiles." Weapons Officer Jin Ho Kang looked surprised. "Conventional missiles, sir. They'll barely dent their shields." "I know," Kim said, "but they'll get their attention." Down in engineering, Dr. Song heard the missile launch alert. She knew what was coming. The ship would soon be performing extreme maneuvers. She secured herself to her workstation with a safety harness. "All engineering personnel, secure yourselves," she ordered. "Reactor approaching test parameters." The reactor core pulsed brighter, its blue glow intensifying. Temperature readings fluctuated wildly. On a normal day, these readings would cause immediate shutdown. Today, they pushed forward. The Defiance launched its missiles at the approaching hegemony ships. As expected, they did little damage, most detonating harmlessly against advanced alien shields. But the attack served its purpose. The port battle group accelerated, moving ahead of the formation. "They're taking the bait," Kim said. "Helm full thrust. Take us straight at them." The Defiance surged forward, engines blazing. The move was so unexpected, so contrary to any sane tactical doctrine, that the enemy hesitated. "Enemy ships adjusting formation," reported Officer Park. "They're moving to intercept." Kim pressed a button on his chair. "Engineering, status of the reactor." Som's voice came through, steady despite the tension. "Reactor at 65% capacity, Captain. Field is stable. We're ready for the pulse on your mark. Stand by." Kim watched the tactical display, waiting for the perfect moment. The Defiance raced toward the enemy formation at maximum speed. Distance closed rapidly. Weapon locks from enemy ships painted the Defiance's hull. "Enemy firing solutions locked," warned Officer Kang. "Multiple weapons charging." "Steady," Kim said, eyes fixed on the display. The first enemy shots lanced out, brilliant beams of energy that the Defiance barely evaded. The ship shuddered as glancing hits struck its shields. "Shields at 82%, reported Defensive Systems Officer Su Bin-1. Still, Kim waited, even as more enemy fire converged on them. The Defiance danced through the barrage, suffering hits but pressing forward. "Now," Kim said finally. "Helm, cut engines. Engineering, initiate pulse." In engineering, Song activated the quantum cascade sequence. The reactor core flared blindingly bright. Energy readings spiked beyond design parameters. Warning alarms blared throughout the section. "Pulse initiating," Song reported, her voice tight with concentration. "Quantum field expanding." The Defiance came to a sudden stop, inertial dampeners straining to compensate. The enemy ships, not expecting this maneuver, continued their approach, closing distance rapidly. Then it happened. A wave of blue-white energy erupted from the Defiance, expanding outward in all directions. Unlike conventional weapons, there was no explosion, no heat, no sound. Just a ripple in reality itself. As the pulse reached the approaching enemy ships, their systems began to fail. Lights flickered and died. Engines cut out. Weapons powered down. 5 enemy cruisers drifted helplessly, caught in the quantum disruption field. "It worked," breathed Commander Lee, staring at the disabled enemy ships. Kim didn't waste a moment. Weapons, conventional missiles, full spread. Target the disabled vessels. The Defiance launched its remaining conventional missiles. This time, they met no resistance, striking powerless ships with devastating effect. 3 enemy cruisers exploded in silent blooms of fire. "Reactor status?" Kim asked. Song's voice came through, strained. "Cooling systems at maximum. Field has collapsed successfully. Reactor at 72% and holding." There was a pause. "Captain, we can't do that again immediately. The core needs time to stabilize." "Understood." Kim studied the tactical display. The pulse had affected only the closest enemy ships. The rest of the Imperial fleet was still coming, and now they knew the Defiance had teeth. "Captain," said Officer Park, "the remaining battle groups are accelerating toward us. They're adjusting their shields. They must be trying to compensate for our weapon." Kim nodded grimly. They had revealed their advantage too soon. The element of surprise was gone. "Helm, evasive pattern delta. Keep us out of their firing solutions. We need to buy time for the reactor to recover." The Defiance moved again, banking hard away from the approaching enemy forces. But the ship was now the focus of the entire Imperial fleet. Hundreds of weapons locked onto it. "Captain," reported Communications Officer Kang, "Grand Admiral Tolrock is hailing us." Kim considered for a moment. "Put him through." The main view screen shifted to show an alien face. Tolrock had gray, textured skin and 4 black eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. His mouth was a thin line without lips. "Human captain," the alien said, his translator converting the clicks and whistles of his native language into Korean. "Your weapon is impressive. Unexpected, but ultimately futile." Kim kept his expression neutral. "Your ships might disagree, Admiral." "A temporary setback," Tolrock said, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence. "We've already adapted our shields. Your advantage is gone." Kim knew the alien was probably right. The hegemony's adaptive technology was legendary, but he couldn't show doubt. "Then why are you calling instead of attacking?" Kim asked. "To offer terms," Tolrock replied. "Surrender your ship and this unusual weapon. In exchange, I will spare your crew. You will be treated as prisoners of war rather than executed as rebels." Kim glanced at his bridge crew. They looked back at him with determination. No one expected mercy from the hegemony. "I appreciate the offer, Admiral," Kim said, "but the Defiance does not surrender." He signaled to cut the transmission. Tolrock's alien face disappeared from the screen. "They'll be coming with everything now," Commander Lee said quietly. Kim nodded. "Engineering, how long until the reactor can pulse again?" Som's voice came through, resolute despite the situation. 20 minutes minimum, Captain. The gravitational anomalies in this system are affecting the stabilization process. 20 minutes. They needed to survive for 20 minutes against the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. "Then we have work to do," Kim said, straightening in his chair. "Let's show them why humans are still fighting." The Defiance executed a series of evasive maneuvers that no ship of its size should have been capable of, confounding the hegemony's targeting systems. The massive vessel spun and dove, accelerated and decelerated in ways that defied conventional physics. Each turn pushed the inertial dampeners to their limits, causing the crew to grip their stations as gravity shifted around them. "How are we doing this?" whispered Commander Lee, watching the tactical display where hundreds of enemy weapons fire missed their mark. Captain Kim allowed himself a small smile. "The quantum cascade reactor doesn't just power weapons. It can bend local spacetime slightly. Makes us more maneuverable." In the enemy fleet, confusion spread through the command channels. Their targeting computers predicted one flight path, but the human ship seemed to slip between the calculations, appearing where it shouldn't be possible. Grand Admiral Tolrock demands to know how we're managing these maneuvers. Communications Officer Min Ji Kang reported, a hint of pride in her voice. "Let him wonder," Kim replied, gripping his chair as the ship shuddered under enemy fire. Not all the enemy shots missed. A barrage of energy weapons struck the Defiance's port side, causing the lights to flicker. The ship groaned like a wounded animal. "Shields at 47%, reported Officer 1, his fingers flying across his console to redistribute power. Kim nodded. "Weapons, target the lead destroyer. Focus all fire." The Defiance's conventional weapons struck back. Missiles and energy beams lanced out from the human ship, concentrated on a single enemy vessel. The hegemony destroyer's shields flared bright under the assault, then failed. The ship broke apart in a silent explosion. "Target destroyed," announced Weapons Officer Jin-Ho Kang. "2 more," ordered Kim. Same tactic. The Defiance continued its impossible dance through space while focusing its firepower on individual targets. 2 more enemy cruisers exploded under the concentrated assault, but the victory was short-lived. A massive energy beam from the Grand Admiral's flagship caught the Defiance mid-maneuver. The impact was devastating. The ship lurched violently, throwing crew members against walls and consoles. "Hull breach on Deck 4, shouted Engineer Song over the comm. "The reactor housing is damaged." An explosion rocked the ship, throwing crew members to the floor. Warning lights flashed across every console. Smoke filled the bridge as a secondary power conduit ruptured. Casualties reported in sections 3, 5, and 7, reported Medical Officer Yoon Hee-bai over the comms, her voice steady despite the chaos in the background. Kim pulled himself back into his chair. Blood flowed from a cut on his forehead, but he ignored it. Status of the quantum reactor. Song's voice came through, broken by static. Containment field is holding, but barely. We've lost the main cooling system. Switching to backup. The tactical display showed the Imperial fleet closing in for the kill. The Defiance had injured them, had destroyed several of their ships, but the outcome was never really in doubt. One ship against hundreds. They're broadcasting on all frequencies, Kang reported. The Grand Admiral says our resistance is futile and unworthy of a species as primitive as ours. Captain Kim wiped blood from his forehead. His eyes moved around the bridge, taking in his crew. Some were injured. All were afraid. But they continued to work at their stations, continued to fight. Route all remaining power to the reactor, he ordered. Prepare for emergency pulse. First Officer Lee looked alarmed. Captain, Dr. Song said the reactor needs time to stabilize. If we pulse now, we die anyway, Kim finished. At least this way, we take some of them with us. Lee hesitated, then nodded. Yes, sir. Down in engineering, alarms screamed as Dr. Song received the captain's order. The reactor core pulsed an angry red now, not the calm blue of before. Cooling fluid leaked from damaged pipes. The temperature in the chamber had risen to dangerous levels. Captain, the reactor is highly unstable, she reported. If we pulse now, I can't guarantee containment. Understood, Doctor, Kim's voice replied. Do your best. Song looked at her team. Their faces were streaked with sweat and grime. Clear the chamber, she ordered. I'll handle this myself. But doctor, began one engineer. Go, she commanded. That's an order. As her team reluctantly evacuated, Song began the delicate process of preparing the damaged reactor for another pulse. Her hands moved carefully over the controls, adjusting parameters, bypassing safety protocols. On the bridge, the situation grew more desperate by the second. 3 more hegemony ships moved into firing position. Their weapons charge, glowing points of light against the blackness of space. Evasive maneuvers. Kim ordered, but the Defiance responded sluggishly, its damaged systems struggling to comply. Enemy fire struck the ship again. A support beam crashed down from the ceiling, narrowly missing Lieutenant Park. Officer 1 was thrown from his station, landing hard on the deck. Shields failing, reported Officer 1 as he crawled back to his post, blood seeping from a wound on his arm. Engineering, status of the pulse. Kim demanded. No answer came. The communication system to engineering had failed. Get me engineering on backup channels, Kim ordered. Communications Officer Kang worked frantically at her station. All channels to engineering are down, Captain. Kim made a quick decision. Commander Lee, you have the bridge. I'm going to engineering. Sir, that's too dangerous, Lee protested. This whole ship is dangerous right now, Kim replied. He headed for the door, pausing only to help Officer 1 back into his chair. The journey to engineering was harrowing. The corridors were filled with smoke and debris. In some sections, emergency bulkheads had sealed off hull breaches, cutting off the normal route. Kim had to climb through maintenance tunnels, navigating by emergency lighting alone. He passed wounded crew members being treated by medical staff in the corridors. Despite their injuries, many saluted as he passed. Kim acknowledged them with a nod, pushing forward. When he finally reached engineering, the situation was worse than he had imagined. The main doors were sealed, emergency containment protocols in effect. Through the small viewport, Kim could see the reactor chamber bathed in red warning lights. Dr. Song worked alone at the main console, her lab coat singed, her movements deliberate despite the chaos around her. Kim used his override code to enter the chamber. Heat struck him like a physical wall. The air tasted metallic. Captain, you shouldn't be here, Song said without looking up from her work. Radiation levels are rising. Neither should you, Kim replied, moving to her side. Report. Song gestured to the reactor core. The containment field is failing. If we pulse now, there's a 70% chance the reactor will breach. And if we don't, we die anyway, she said, echoing his earlier words. Kim nodded. Can you set it to delayed pulse? Give us time to evacuate the crew. Song shook her head. The controls are too damaged. Someone has to stay and manage the pulse manually. She finally looked up at him. I'll do it. No, Kim said firmly. I need you to get the escape pods ready. You're the only one who understands this technology. If anyone survives, it has to be you. They stared at each other for a long moment. Around them, the ship shuddered as more enemy fire struck home. The crew won't leave without their captain, Song said finally. They will if you tell them I'm right behind you, Kim replied. He touched the communicator on his wrist. Bridge, this is the captain. Begin emergency evacuation procedures. All hands to escape pods. Commander Lee's voice came through, shocked. Captain. That's an order, Commander. I'm staying behind to trigger the pulse. Get as many of our people out as you can. There was a brief silence. Then, yes, sir. May your ancestors watch over you. Kim turned back to Song. Show me what to do, Doctor. Quickly. Song hesitated, then began explaining the manual pulse procedure. Her instructions were precise, technical. Kim listened carefully, memorizing each step. Once you start the sequence, you'll have about 30 seconds before the pulse releases. Song finished. Not enough time to get to an escape pod. I understand, Kim said. He looked at the reactor core, pulsing like an angry heart. Go now. Help the others. Song touched his arm briefly, then turned and ran from the chamber. Alone with the failing reactor, Captain Kim moved to the main console. His fingers hovered over the controls. The ship rocked again as more enemy fire struck. Warning messages flashed across the screen, each one more urgent than the last. Come on, he muttered to himself. Let's make this count. He waited, giving the crew time to reach the escape pods. On the external monitors, he could see the Imperial fleet, surrounding the Defiance like wolves around wounded prey. They were holding their fire now, perhaps detecting the evacuation and hoping to capture prisoners. Finally, the evacuation signal showed complete. Small dots on the tactical display indicated escape pods launching from the Defiance, racing away from the battle. Kim took a deep breath and began the pulse sequence. As promised, a countdown appeared on the screen. 30 seconds. He opened a channel to the Imperial flagship, Grand Admiral Tolrock. This is Captain Kim of the TSS Defiance. The alien's face appeared on the screen. Have you finally decided to surrender, human? No, Kim replied calmly. I wanted to show you something about primitive species. We're not so easily defeated. Confusion crossed the alien's features. Your ship is crippled. Your crew is fleeing. What possible threat do you pose now? Kim smiled. You're about to find out. The countdown reached 0. The reactor core flared with blinding intensity. The last thing Captain Kim saw was pure white light as the quantum cascade pulse erupted from the Defiance, more powerful than ever before. The escape pods had been a ruse. Captain Tadwan Kim stood on the damaged ridge of the Defiance, surrounded by his exhausted but determined crew. The pods they had launched were empty, a desperate gambit to make the hegemony believe the crew had abandoned ship. In reality, every surviving crew member remained on board, ready to follow their captain on one final mission. Reactor at 92% capacity and rising, Dr. Song reported from engineering, her voice tight with tension. We're beyond safety parameters, Captain. The ship's AI chimed in with its emotionless assessment. Probability of survival, 11.8%. Kim studied the tactical display. The Defiance was badly damaged. Hull breaches on multiple decks had been sealed with emergency force fields. Life support was failing in several sections. They could not win a conventional battle. We need to get closer to the star, Kim ordered, and we need the Imperial fleet to follow us. First Officer Lee looked at him in shock. "Sir, that's suicide." "So does doing nothing," Kim replied. "Helm, take us in." Communications broadcast that our engines are failing. Navigation Officer Choi hesitated for only a moment before inputting the commands. The Defiance changed course, its damaged engines pushing the ship toward the system's unstable star. The massive yellow giant pulsed on the view screen, solar flares stretching thousands of kilometers into space. Broadcasting distress signal, Communications Officer Kang confirmed, reporting critical engine failure and loss of navigational control. The ship shuddered as it accelerated. Damaged systems protested the strain. In engineering, Dr. Song and her team worked frantically to keep the quantum reactor stable despite the rising power levels. "The star's gravitational field is already affecting our sensors," reported Officer Ryu. "Temperature rising in all outer sections." Kim nodded. "Reroute power from life support in unused sections to strengthen forward shields." On the tactical display, they watched as the Imperial fleet adjusted course. The enemy ships moved cautiously at first, then with growing confidence as they detected the Defiance's apparent helplessness. "They're taking the bait," Commander Lee observed. "All ships are pursuing." Kim allowed himself a grim smile. "They think we're being pulled into the star. They want to capture us before we're destroyed." The plan was desperate, born from Captain Kim's study of the quantum reactor's theoretical capabilities. Dr. Song had explained months ago that the reactor could create a subspace rupture, a tear in the fabric of reality itself. Under normal circumstances, such a rupture would be small and contained, but near a star, with its massive gravitational field and intense radiation. "Grand Admiral Tolrock is hailing us again," Kang reported. "Put him through," Kim ordered. The alien commander's face appeared on screen. His 4 black eyes studied Kim with cold calculation. "Your situation appears desperate, human," Tolrock said. "Surrender now, and I will send tugs to pull your vessel free of the star's gravity well." Kim kept his expression neutral. "Our engines are failing. We cannot control our descent. We require immediate assistance." "Of course," Tolrock replied, his thin mouth twisting in what might have been a smile. "We will rescue your vessel. Prepare to be boarded." The transmission ended. Kim looked around at his bridge crew. Their arrogance will be their undoing. The Defiance continued its apparent helpless drift toward the star. Behind it, the Imperial fleet closed in, weapons ready but not firing. They wanted the ship intact, wanted its technology. Grand Admiral Tolrock had ordered his fleet to capture the human vessel at all costs. "Distance to optimal position?" Kim asked. 400,000 kilometers from the star's corona," Officer Choi replied. 2 minutes at current speed." Kim opened a shipwide channel. "All hands, this is your captain. Secure yourselves for extreme gravitational conditions. This is our final stand." Throughout the ship, the remaining crew members strapped themselves into acceleration harnesses. In the medical bay, the wounded were secured to their beds. In engineering, Dr. Song and her team locked down all movable equipment. The temperature inside the ship rose steadily as they approached the star. Cooling systems strained to compensate. The ship's outer hull began to glow faintly from the heat. "Imperial fleet maintaining pursuit," reported Officer Park. "Their lead ships are experiencing the same thermal effects we are. They're pushing their shields to maximum," added Officer 1. "But they're still coming." The massive star filled the view screen now, its surface a churning sea of superheated plasma. Solar flares reached out like grasping fingers. The ship's sensors screamed warnings about radiation levels and gravitational stress. "We're reaching the optimal position," Officer Choi announced, sweat streaming down her face from the rising heat. 350,000 kilometers from the corona. "They're in position," Tactical Officer Park announced. "All ships within the resonance field." Kim took a deep breath. This was it, the moment that would determine the fate not just of his ship, but possibly of humanity itself. If they failed, the hegemony would continue its conquest unchallenged. If they succeeded, initiate Prometheus Protocol, he ordered. The command was relayed to engineering. Dr. Song's fingers flew across her console, redirecting the quantum reactor's output to create a targeted subspace rupture. Warning lights flashed across her station as the reactor core temperature soared beyond design tolerances. Reactor at critical threshold, she warned through the comm system. The field is forming. In the heart of the ship, the quantum cascade reactor pulsed with blinding energy. The exotic particles it had been generating for weeks now reached a critical concentration. The safety systems had been deliberately bypassed. There was no going back. The first signs of the Prometheus Protocol were subtle. A slight distortion in the space around the Defiance, visible only as a wavering in the starlight. Then, a pulse of blue-white energy erupted from the ship, expanding outward in a perfect sphere. When the pulse reached the star's corona, something remarkable happened. The stellar material seemed to bend inward, as if being sucked into an invisible whirlpool. A dark spot formed on the star's surface, growing rapidly. "What's happening?" Commander Lee asked, staring at the view screen in awe. "The quantum field is interacting with the star's magnetic field," Kim explained, recalling Dr. Song's briefing. "It's creating a localized distortion in space-time." The Imperial ships closest to the phenomenon were the first to experience its effects. Their hulls warped visibly, metal stretching and twisting as if made of rubber. Several smaller vessels imploded instantly, crushed by forces that defied understanding. Grand Admiral Tulrock is ordering his fleet to retreat, reported Officer Kang, listening to the enemy communications. They don't understand what's happening. It was too late for retreat. The distortion expanded rapidly, engulfing more enemy ships. Some vanished entirely, as if they had never existed. Others broke apart, their pieces swirling toward the growing vortex on the star's surface. The Defiance itself began to feel the effects. The hull groaned under impossible stresses. Rivets popped from bulkheads like bullets. The view screen cracked from one edge to the other. "Structural integrity failing," shouted Officer 1. "Hull breach on decks 2, 5, and 9. Engineering reports the reactor containment is breaking down," added Officer Kang. "Dr. Song says we have less than 60 seconds before total failure." Kim gripped the arms of his command chair. "Helm, emergency thrust. Get us away from the star." Officer Choi fought with her controls. Engines responding, but barely. The gravitational pull is too strong. The damaged Defiance struggled against the forces it had unleashed. Its engines glowed white-hot with strain. The ship vibrated violently, threatening to tear itself apart. On the tactical display, they could see the Imperial fleet being demolished. Ships that had terrorized human colonies for years were being crushed like insects. Grand Admiral Tulrock's flagship, the massive dreadnought that had led the conquest of Earth, twisted impossibly before breaking into 1,000 pieces. "We've done it," whispered Commander Lee. "We've destroyed them." "Not yet," Kim replied tensely. "We need to survive to tell the tale." The Defiance continued its desperate flight from the star. Behind it, the quantum distortion reached a critical point. The dark spot on the star's surface collapsed inward, then erupted in a massive solar flare. A wall of superheated plasma shot outward, directly toward the fleeing human ship. "Brace for impact," Kim shouted. The wave of stellar material struck the Defiance with unimaginable force. The ship tumbled end over end, spinning away from the star like a leaf in a hurricane. Everyone on board was pressed into their seats by the acceleration. Those who weren't properly secured were thrown against bulkheads. For a moment, Kim thought they were finished. The ship's systems failed completely. The lights went out. The artificial gravity vanished. They spun in silence and darkness, at the mercy of physics. Then, gradually, emergency systems began to activate. Dim red lighting illuminated the bridge. The backup computer came online. "Report," Kim croaked, tasting blood in his mouth. One by one, the surviving officers checked their stations. Many consoles were dead, but some still functioned. "Engines offline," reported Officer Choi. "We're on a ballistic trajectory away from the star." "Life support functioning on emergency power," added Officer 1. "Hull breaches on all decks, but containment fields are holding." "Communications?" Kim asked. Officer Kang shook her head. "Long-range communications are down. Short range only." Kim turned to the tactical display, but it showed only static. "Sensors? Partially functional," Officer Ree replied. "But I'm not detecting any enemy ships. Either they're gone, or we're too damaged to see them." Captain Kim leaned back in his chair, feeling every bruise and cut from the violent ride they had just experienced. They were alive, barely. The ship was crippled but intact. And most importantly, the Imperial fleet appeared to be destroyed. "Send a message to engineering," he ordered. "I want to know if Dr. Song and her team survived, and the status of the quantum reactor." As the Defiance drifted through space, trailing debris and venting atmosphere, Captain Kim allowed himself a moment of hope. They had done the impossible. One ship against hundreds, the weakest against the strongest, humanity against the might of the galactic hegemony. And somehow, they had won. A blinding light erupted from the Defiance, expanding outward in concentric waves of energy that interacted with the star's magnetic field. The quantum cascade created a chain reaction that tore through the Imperial fleet like tissue paper. The light was so intense that the ship's view screens automatically darkened to protect the crew's eyes. Captain Kim shielded his face with his arm anyway, a reflex action against the overwhelming brightness. Around him, the bridge crew did the same, momentarily blinded by their own weapon. When they could see again, the sight before them defied belief. The Imperial fleet was simply coming apart. Capital ships that had terrorized human colonies for years were being ripped open as space itself seemed to fold around them. Massive dreadnoughts twisted into impossible shapes before breaking into pieces. The mighty Grand Admiral's flagship, a vessel 5 kilometers long, disintegrated in seconds, scattering into glittering debris. "The quantum field is destabilizing their atomic structure," whispered Officer Ryu, staring at his sensor readings in disbelief. "It's as if the laws of physics have been temporarily suspended." The destruction spread through the enemy formation like a wave. Ships further from the epicenter tried to flee, engines blazing at full power. None escaped. The quantum cascade caught them all, leaving nothing but scattered atoms where the proud Imperial Armada had once been. The Defiance itself, riding the outer edge of the shockwave, was flung violently to the periphery of the system. The ship tumbled end over end, its structural integrity field straining to keep the vessel in one piece. Systems failed across all decks. Fires broke out in multiple sections. The artificial gravity fluctuated wildly, causing crew members to float from their stations before being slammed back down. Captain Kim was thrown from his command chair. He struck his head against a console before landing hard on the deck plate. For several seconds, he lay there, dazed and disoriented. The taste of blood filled his mouth. Warning klaxons wailed in the distance, muffled by the ringing in his ears. Gradually, the ship's tumble slowed. Emergency systems engaged, stabilizing their flight path. Battery-powered lights cast a dim red glow across the damaged bridge. "Damage report," Kim called out, pulling himself up from the floor. His voice sounded strange in his own ears. Around him, his officers were also picking themselves up, checking for injuries, returning to their stations. Some consoles were dark. Others sparked dangerously. Smoke hung in the air, stinging their eyes. Commander Lee wiped blood from a cut on his cheek. "Communications are down. Life support operating on emergency power. Hull breaches on decks 3 through 7. Engineering," Kim called into his communicator. "Status of the reactor." For a long moment, there was no response. Kim felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. Had they lost Dr. Song and her team? Then, crackling with static, her voice came through. "Engineering to bridge. The reactor is offline. Containment field held, but only just. Casualties?" Kim asked. 3 dead, 12 injured, Song replied, managing a weak smile that came through in her voice. But we're alive. And the enemy fleet. Kim looked to the tactical display, but it showed only static. Officer Ryu, can you confirm enemy status? Sensor Officer Ryu worked at his partly functioning console. Sensors are limited, but I'm detecting no large mass concentrations within range. Just debris. Lots of debris. A stunned silence fell over the bridge. They had done it. One ship against hundreds. The impossible victory. We need to get communications back online, Kim said finally. The colonies need to know what happened here. In the days that followed, the crew of the Defiance worked tirelessly to repair their crippled vessel. The damage was extensive. Many systems were beyond repair with their limited resources, but the quantum reactor, though offline, remained intact. And more importantly, Dr. Song and her team had survived to preserve its secrets. Using parts salvaged from their own damaged systems, they managed to restore short-range communications. Their first signals reached a small mining outpost on the edge of the system. From there, the news spread like wildfire. A human ship had destroyed the Imperial Armada. Grand Admiral Tolrock was dead. The hegemony's strongest fleet was gone. At first, many refused to believe it. The story seemed impossible, a desperate fantasy born from years of oppression. But as the Defiance limped to the mining outpost, visual confirmation removed all doubt. The battered human vessel was real. Its victory was real. Within weeks, the news had reached every human colony under hegemony control. The destruction of such a significant portion of the Imperial fleet created a power vacuum that the alien government struggled to fill. Outlying sectors saw an immediate reduction in hegemony presence as ships were recalled to protect core worlds. One by one, human resistance movements seized the opportunity. On Proxima Colony, human workers overwhelmed their lightly armed overseers. On New Terra, the underground resistance launched coordinated attacks against hegemony administrative centers. On Alpha Centauri, the colonial governor declared independence, backed by militia forces armed with smuggled weapons. The Defiance itself became a symbol of hope. Captain Kim found himself thrust into the role of not just a military leader, but a symbol around which humans throughout the galaxy could rally. His name was whispered in occupied territories. His tactics were studied by resistance fighters. His example inspired countless acts of courage. 3 months after the battle, the Defiance had been repaired enough for interstellar travel. It was not the same ship that had faced the Imperial Armada. Much of its advanced technology remained offline. Its once sleek hull was now a patchwork of repairs. But it flew, and it carried with it the quantum reactor, the key to humanity's future. Captain Kim stood on the bridge, watching as the last of the repair crews returned from outside the hull. His crew had changed too. Some had been lost in the battle. Others carried visible scars. All had been transformed by what they had experienced. "Course, Captain?" asked Officer Choi from the navigation station. Kim considered for a moment. There were many possible destinations. Human colonies calling for leadership. Hidden resistance bases seeking technology. Former Earth territories ripe for liberation. Set course for the Orion colonies, he decided. The hegemony still has a strong presence there, and there are millions of humans waiting for freedom. The Orion sector is heavily defended, noted Commander Lee. At least 5 hegemony battlegroups. 5, Kim replied with a smile. That hardly seems fair to them. A chuckle spread through the bridge crew. They had faced hundreds of enemy ships and survived. 5 battle groups seemed almost routine by comparison. As the Defiance prepared to jump to light speed, Captain Kim made a final entry in his log. He recorded the names of those lost in the battle. He documented the technical specifications of the quantum cascade effect for future reference, and he added a personal note, a thought that had stayed with him through the darkest moments of their struggle. The hegemony believed that humanity's primitive nature made us inferior, he wrote. They failed to understand that our greatest strength lies in that very nature, our refusal to accept defeat, our ability to find hope in hopeless situations, our willingness to fight against impossible odds. Today we prove that one ship can change the course of a war. Tomorrow we will prove that one species can change the course of the galaxy. As the stars stretched into lines around them, the Defiance leaped into hyperspace, carrying with it humanity's newfound hope. Throughout occupied human space, resistance fighters told the story of Captain Ta-Won Kim and the brave crew of the TSS Defiance. They spoke of how a single ship had destroyed the galactic hegemon's strongest fleet. They described the quantum weapon that had turned the tide of war. Some details became exaggerated in the telling. Some aspects became mythologized. But the core truth remained: humanity had struck back. The seemingly invincible enemy could be defeated. Freedom was possible. And across the stars, the oppressed began to rise. The end.